Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the conclusion of the Rogue miniseries. Last time, the title heroine fought through countless Assassin's Guild members on her way to Belladonna, finding Gambit, Cody, and Tantimati all captured by the Madwoman. The benefactress Kendra decided to make things more something by removing powers from both women, leaving Rogue all too vulnerable to a knife in the shoulder.
The cover is pretty simple, a white background as Cody lies in Rogue's lap while she's sobbing.
Oh, I've got a good feeling about this. Happy ending, here we come!
I also noticed that the colored foil they used for the title is also in effect used on Rogue's belt. Not sure why, though. But anyway, our gal is reminiscing the last time she was able to feel such sharp pain, way back before she absorbed Miss Marvel's powers, including invulnerability. But she needs her head in the here and now and pulls the knife out, which, medically speaking, you're not supposed to do, but maybe we can forgive her given the situation. At least Belladonna is being nice enough to wait for her before kicking her in the face on a 2-page spread. She recounts how Rogue absorbed her memories a while back, and restates her confidence in her assassin training that she doesn't need the powers that Kendra sapped from them. Being punched doesn't keep Rogue from insisting Belle stop blaming her for an accident, and with innocence in danger, the X-Man fights the pain to strike with her injured arm, giving her time to retreat.
Attacking a master assassin with the wounded arm? How very Cassandra Cain of you. Okay, I know, Rogue did this about 7 or so years earlier, but I'm giving the points to Cass because her arm was a lot worse off, and it's her anniversary year, and it's my show.
Donna must be super duper petty, since now that her opponent got one hit in, she's suddenly soured on Kendra's game, so attacks her supposed ally with another secret knife. But this isn't a problem since the external is telekinetic, pulling the blade away and slamming the young woman against a wall. She warns that with her extended life, Belle's guild, their enemies, the thieves, the world itself only have value in service to Kendra, and the assassins can be snuffed out on her whim. In short, best not to get on her bad side. She warns that their powers will gradually return, but is unsure which of them will be first. Meanwhile, Rogue, not enjoying her lack of powers as much as she thought she would, bandages her wound and is ready to show how much more she is than just her mutant abilities.
Unfortunately, her heretofore unmentioned talent in web design proves to be of very little help.
Kendra wakes up Gambit so they can chat, and she can ignore his pleas to help Cody. She's unfazed since mutants and humans are equally mortal compared to externals, and Remy could have shared in her long life had he not betrayed her, but he figures she'd have dumped him the second he bored her, keeping their chat going while we get an X-ray look at his shackled hand holding a pick inside.
Honestly, I'm still wondering why Tantimati is still being restrained. Can't she create a water clone and throw Kendra out the window or something and then free herself? Or does having undefined powers also come with undefined weaknesses?
Belle is calling out her opponent. Apparently the mansion's best hiding places are memories Rogue didn't absorb. But the mutant steps out of the shadows willingly, stating that Kendra is the real enemy. Belle doesn't disagree, but she'd rather deal with her later. Rogue insists she was trying to protect Donna when the accident happened, but despite all that, she isn't going to let these plans against her loved ones bear any fruit. After the slashing of her glove with yet another hidden blade, Rogue grabs her, realizing her powers are returning, somehow, and asks if Belle wants the rest of her memories taken. The assassin says she can only remember how to hate and kill, but Rogue's powers don't work like that, and that means she made a choice to be how she is. Not taking any of the blame for that, she decisively knocks Donna out.
I suppose Rogue could have tried mentioning this beforehand, like when Singer was teleconferencing them in issue 1, or when they were about to fight in issue 3, but I doubt it would have put Donna any more at ease. And at least one of those times, I'm not entirely sure Rogue was fully aware Donna had any gaps in her memory to begin with.
LeBeau's sweet talk isn't getting him anywhere with Kendra, and Maddie seems real certain Cody is hanging on by a thread. Having freed both his hands, must be one of those devices that unlocks both if you unlock one, he grabs the external, which really doesn't work. Remy is pulled out of the restraining device completely, saying his old, let's just say acquaintance, is so bored with her long life that she abandoned her soul to coldly treat people like pawns. Scoffing at the idea of Gambit speaking with some kind of noble intent, she's ready to finish him off when someone calls her from behind. At first seeing Belladonna, it was Rogue pulling the old somehow prop up your beaten opponent in the doorway to briefly throw off the main boss trick, even though you'd think Kandra would be able to tell the two women's voices apart. In exchange for the Cajun, Kandra chooses Cody to launch out of the mansion like a missile.
All this because she's got a long life, likes games, and is continually bored? Jeez, lady, get a PlayStation or an Xbox. Or both.
Rogue's flight hasn't quite returned, so attempting to catch up to Cody only leaves her hanging on a ledge. Kandra decides to taunt her some more as she climbs up, teasing when she might let him go. Note the misdirected dialogue bubble pointing at Rogue when it's actually Kandra's dialogue. She caps it off by insinuating that Rogue must be enjoying this on some level, even the pain, and suggests taking her powers permanently, pulling Gambit in telekinetically, while suggesting she could feel and touch without harming others, all for the price of someone who's probably going to die real soon anyway. Rogue turns her down, her strength surging back and allowing her to break free of the TK field. Kandra wasn't expecting that and is knocked out, with the follow-up result of releasing Cody while he's still in midair. Rogue narrowly catches him, vowing never to leave him behind again, and somehow make things better with the help of Professor Xavier or Moira McTaggart, because what good are brainiacs if they can't help you resurrect your old boyfriend? Sadly, according to Maddie, Cody's time is about up, and Rogue needs to let go. But with her powers, Maddie can give them both closure. Rogue accepts the offer, with the older woman grabbing the left side of her face, barehanded.
Okay, so we've got healing, we've got long-distance manipulation of and communication through water, and immune to Rogue's absorption powers. Any other random abilities this lady has we should know about?
Oh, right. She conveniently knew where Gambit was, so let's add mutant tracking while we're at it. The X-Man finds herself on a floating chunk of land, told by the astral projection of a childlike Cody that it's their special place down by the river.
When you're living in a van down by the river!
And what's weirder than this astral projection, Cody as a child, or the sudden Saturday Night Live reference? The fact that the guy calls her by her code name and not, her real name.
I mean, maybe the explanation's just really mundane, like, at the time, no one at Marvel had really considered what Rogue's given name was going to be. But it's still weird that Cody calls her that. Equally weird is that she's been going back to the same childhood town every year since that kiss, which is maybe between 8 and 10 years or so, and hasn't encountered anyone else that might recognize her?
She apologizes for what happened so many years ago, but Cody says it was no one's fault and she should leave the past in the past, instead of blaming herself for something they couldn't change.
Well, someone has not been told about the prolific use of time travel within the superhero world.
He has no regrets because this is where he was happiest. Yet another misdirected speech bubble pointing to Rogue, when it's Cody's dialogue, saying that she should move on, live life to the fullest for the both of them, and that kissing her is a memory he'll cherish as he moves on to wherever he's headed.
I wonder how he'd react if he was told he's the only version of Cody that eventually dies from that kiss with Rogue. In the first X-Men movie, X-Men Evolution, the 90s animated series, all those versions of Cody only get hospitalized for anywhere between a couple of days and a couple of weeks. But in either case, absorption powers or no, there are still people who would kill to make out with Rogue.
Please ask me to kill for you.
No, homie.
In a flash of light, we return to the material plane and Cody has passed away. Thanking him with a kiss, Rogue says he was the best thing to ever happen to her, as the story comes to an end.
And that was Rogue's first miniseries. It does get rather eyebrow-raising in the second half, particularly in the fourth issue, but overall I found it very enjoyable.
Though it is kind of a follow-up from the Gambit miniseries, it does more or less work just as well as its own story. After all, Gambit's story made multiple references to events before its publication, and it's not much worse here. Though we do have a believable reason to bring Belladonna back into the fray and give focus on Rogue as a person. She'd been defined so often as a character haunted by a childhood accident, and here we see her step up and show what she can do on her own. We don't see too much of her skills without her powers, but how cool and collected she is in combat situations acts as a good foundation for her taking on a leadership role in the X-Men years later. I did think it was odd that for all of Belle's boasting of her skills as a killer, after fighting the Hand, she went down in 3 non-consecutive punches, 2 of which were from Rogue's injured arm, though she seemed to sense that her powers were returning, so you could attribute some of that to her super strength, especially that last punch.
I thought Belladonna's motivations were pretty good, but I think maybe it would have been more poignant for the story if she never revealed, not to characters, especially not to the reader, why she was after Rogue. At least not until maybe their fight in issue 4, or at the very earliest, the end of issue 3. Make it seem as if just the absorption itself was the reason she was out for revenge, then the bombshell that Belle's been suffering from gaps in her memory this whole time. I think it would have emphasized Rogue's assertion that her rival was working on misplaced anger, and that maybe Rogue was blaming herself more than she should have for what happened.
Much like how Gambit's story had a dark and gritty feel to both the narrative and the graphic style, the art in this story fits the character's more upbeat and bright tone, something I've associated with Rogue at the time. Even with the restrictions her powers mandate, she still could have a bit of fun now and then. There were noticeable errors, speech bubbles going to the wrong person, a coloring goof here or there, but it's otherwise solid. I know blood can dry to a brownish color, but I've mostly seen it dry black. And this is supposed to be fresh blood anyway. The story itself also had its hiccups, like the confusion about Gambit promising something when he technically didn't, the peculiar variety of Tante Maddie's powers. And, I looked up her name on Google Translate, and it seems that Tante is just aunt. So she's Aunt Maddie. And you want to specify French because it'll automatically go to Italian, which is something a lot less flattering. There were other smaller details, like Donna wanting a piece of Remy before Kandra got him, which never got followed up on. But then a lot wasn't followed up on, to be honest. Why does the former but still actually technically Mrs. LeBeau have gaps in her memory, if not because of Rogue's powers? Did she call it quits on revenge after she woke up and found Cody was dead already?
I heard in a song that every Southern belle is a Mississippi queen. Down to Mississippi, down to New Orleans. And since Rogue is a Southern belle from Mississippi, I think she outranks Belladonna.
Did Kandra just up and leave because things were boring now? Some of these things played key parts in the story and just don't get addressed. I would have thought they'd have at least commented on how Gambit just abandoned his wife, and that's why she wanted to smack him around a bit before Kandra, but they don't bring it up at all. Gambit just followed Rogue because he has the hots for her, contrasted to her joining him in his title out of genuine concern. I guess he was a necessary supporting role, but at least he wasn't made out to be the center of attention. One thing that finally sunk into me as I was doing this review is that for all the talk about Rogue's absorption powers, she never uses them. Flight, super strength, and vulnerability, yeah, those are always on the table. But the powers she was born with, we don't see her use throughout the story except in some flashbacks. Considering how much they've always weighed on her and how core they are to the central conflict, I'm wondering if maybe that was intentional, as if there were a deeper reason for her not using them. If you've ever been a fan of Rogue, I would suggest checking this out because there is some emotional payoff in the end, but there are finer story points that just go ignored, it seems.
It does seem a little odd that Cody, someone who spent a good decade or so in a vegetative state, ends up dying and is okay with everything. But I guess we have confirmation finally that making out with Rogue, totally worth it. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.